Okay, Shimano has announced their new reels for 2025. Not just reels, there's other stuff too. But in this video, let's just cover the new models coming out. And more importantly, how they slot into their existing lineup. First up, Stella SW. I'm not going to talk much about this reel here. I don't know much about the saltwater Stellas. From what I understand, speaking to people who know a lot more about this class of reel than I do, mostly incremental changes. The quote I keep hearing is that Shimano played it pretty safe, which is sort of the Shimano way. I don't think Shimano kind of forges ahead with a lot. I mean, especially on a flagship like this. But people who know more about tuna GT fishing with this type of gear, feel free to chime in. I do like this, right? The waterproof handle knob. That's obviously nice. But anyway, Shimano's website explains all the changes pretty well for those of you who want to read their line roller loosening prevention mechanism, which I suppose is very important when you're applying 20, 30 pounds of drag. In any case, that's the new flagship update. The important one I want to talk about is the Twin Power XD. And I feel that the XD has always caused some confusion. People seem to think that it's a beefier version of the original Twin Power. That's actually not the case. It's actually a more finesse version because it has the MGL rotor. Here, Shimano kind of breaks down their core solid versus their MGL line. So, top dog in each, Vanquish and Stella. The Vanquish is obviously Shimano's best finesse tune spinning reel. Next up would be the Twin Power XD. But the Twin Power XD has a very limited range, right? It only goes from a compact 3000 body up to a compact 5000 body. So only two real sizes, basically. Then the Vanford, then the Miraval, which I didn't know Shimano included in the MGL lineup. Core Solid, Stella, Twin Power, which is a regular Twin Power, Stratic, and the Ultegra. So the main difference is just the rotor. A heavier aluminum rotor, in theory, sort of aligns your drag output a little bit better. It supports a higher drag setting, all things being equal. And that's basically what Shimano is going after. Also, the core solid reels have a very distinct sensation when you're reeling the handle. That's sort of unique to Shimano. I feel that Daiwa goes Zion for all their rotors, from Exist to Certate. They don't really differentiate between those two, but Shimano makes a big deal out of preserving that heavy, refined winding feel on their core solid models. So that's the Twin Power XD. Like I said, in terms of models, it's a very narrow band, right? It starts at the Compact 3000, which is a 2500 body with a deeper 3000 series spool. Then the regular 4000, which presumably has the 3000 size body, and up to the Compact 5000. Or I'm sorry, the 4000. See, there's no true 3000 size body. It goes from 2500 to 4000. And the difference between the 4000 and the Compact 5000, once again, is just the spool size, spool capacity, and also presumably the drag pressure. Although here I see the drag pressure stays exactly the same. Yeah, that actually makes sense. I think drag pressure is a function of the spool diameter in terms of how large a washer they can fit in there. So in any case, it has the rounder, I think, EVA knobs on the smaller sizes, and then the CI4 knob. Yeah, power model. And this, as far as I can tell, is made for saltwater fishing. It's sort of a size that I don't think makes a lot of sense here. Like, if you have a 4 or 5000 size spinning reel, what do you really use? I mean, it's too small for anyone serious about striped bass, and it's too large for fluke. So, maybe blackfish. I don't I don't know. For blackfish, if you're using a spinning reel, I would get the Daiwa BG or a large, 4 or 5,000 Stratic. I think that makes more sense. I mean, it takes a lot of beating. You don't need any of the casting features. And you honestly don't really need a smooth drag. I mean, guys are using probably 30 to 50 pound fluoro leaders. So it's all about getting that lockdown drag and having the right kind of gearing to get those fish out. In any case, that's the twin power. Oh, the most important thing they added is the new X Protect. And this is very interesting. I would imagine normally this kind of new feature, and this is the only reel that has this right now, would be something Shimano usually waits for the next generation Stella and then trickles that down. But they popped this right into the Twin Power XD. And let me find it here. I don't see it. I mean, there is X ship, but hang on. There's no. That's the anti-twist fin. Okay, so this is the regular X Protect. No, this is the new X Protect, and that is the feature they're putting in the line roller. I don't know how the old one. I'm pretty sure. Hang on a second. All right, here's a comparison image. So this is the original X Protect that they have in the line roller. That little labyrinth system that kind of keeps water out. And then here they added that little off-center piece. And supposedly it does a better job as well as help fling water out, with centrifugal force when you spin the reel. And if it works as advertised, I find this a very elegant system. That line roller bearing is the first to go, right? You need it to spin, but you also can't help getting see. I mean, every time you retrieve line, the line roller is squeezing salt water out and then forcing it right into that little gap that leads to the bearing and the line roller assembly. So Shimano does the X Protect as well as that waterproof grease. And I'm not a big fan of that grease. It's very heavy. It makes the line roller not want to spin under light pressure. But by all accounts, the X Protect as a whole, not just here in the line roller, but underneath the rotor, it does an excellent job keeping salt water out. Much, much better job, in my opinion, than MagSeal. MagSeal and Daiwa reels at this point is just not something I use in salt water. I'm a big fan of Daiwa reels, but my Exist, Surtays, Arides, they're all for freshwater duty only, which is sort of a shame. I'm a big fan of Daiwa's design, but just functionally, I've known too many Maxio reels to fail in salt water. Both my own and people in my circle who I know don't abuse their equipment. They know how to take care of their reels. They just don't last. So Shimano is it. It obviously has the Duracross drag, and I mentioned this in my Vanquish and Twin Power review. Shimano figured out, in my view, how to build a durable drag system that is also very smooth at low drag pressure. Okay, next up is the new Ultegra, and this one is a little bit less exciting, although the Ultegra has traditionally been the lowest tier Shimano spinning reel equipped with X Protect, and therefore I do recommend it. I feel that, again, X Protect just does such a great job keeping salt and sand out of your reel as long as you're not dunking it. I mean, none of these reels are waterproof, but compared to MagSeal, X Protect, the Labyrinth system that Shimano came up with, it definitely works a lot better in my experience. So moving down the line, the Ultegra is sort of that, slightly cheaper version of the Stratic. Although the Stratic has the aluminum side plate, the aluminum reel foot, and as far as I know, the Ultegra is a CI4 material. So you don't get much weight savings going with the Ultegra. And to me, if you want something a little bit more robust, the Stratic is sort of the baseline reel for that. And if you wanted more lightweight, easier startup inertia, then the Vanford. The Vanford is really the sweet spot for fluking. So if you get a 2500, 3000 size Vanford, you pair that with any of the 7 foot 6 spinning rods that I recommend, the Zodias. The Daiwa ones are probably what I lean towards to these days. The Daiwa Tatula 7.6. That combo is the last combo you need for fluking for most people. Okay, so the Ultegra is nice. They lowered the weight a little bit. They made some improvements to the gearing. That's what Infinity Cross is. Infinity Drive, that main shaft going up and down, they improved the smoothness of that operation. It has the anti-twist fin. What it doesn't have is the Duracross drag. It doesn't have Infinity Loop, which is that slow oscillation up and down. So really the full package for the latest Shimano suite of technology is obviously the Stella, the Vanquish, and the various new versions of the Twin Power. But the Ultegra is perfectly capable reel. You'll be extremely happy with it. I used to have the older version of the Ultegra. I had 3 of them, and those were the reels that I would loan out to people who don't really fish, as well as when I used to do private lessons in person, and they work great. I mean, they all held up even in the hands of people who don't really, have any experience keeping them out of sand or water splashes and stuff like that. So highly recommended. It's about time they had a refresh. It looks nice with the gold accents. And yeah, I mean, these are not exactly light reels, right? So compact 3000 size coming in at 220. I'm pretty sure that's the weight of the Stratic. Anyway, so that's the Ultegra, and that is sort of the budget option that I will recommend for people fluking from shore, from a boat, wherever there's salt water. The Ultegra is sort of the baseline model. Okay, so next up is the new Complex XR, and this is a model that I never paid much attention to in the past, but this actually caught my attention. So I don't know if this is new, but Shimano added. Alright, so you see here it's a very light reel, but Shimano added this, which is the rigid support drag, and that's just a secondary ball bearing support underneath the spool. And this is what the Stella, Vanquish, and Twin Power has, which the Vanford does not have. So the Complex XR, as far as I can tell, is a finesse tuned Vanford, right? So it has the CI4 body and side plate, MGL spool, it's very light. Again, a very narrow band of models, starting with the compact 2500 size, which in the States is like a trout panfish size reel, right? It's a 1K body with a 2500 spool that's pretty shallow. But these 2 models, the regular 2500, that could have applications in fluking and also bass fishing. So line capacity, PE1, 150 meters, that's more than enough. And again, what really caught my interest is the double bearing support drag. And that does make your drag output a little bit more stabilized and therefore smoother. People don't think that drag is that important when it comes to fluke, and I mostly agree, right? You're using 12, 14 pound leader. Even a really large fluke is not going to break that off on a straight run. However, when you set the hook, that is tremendous pressure and stress on your line, on your knots, even on your hook. So having the right drag setting and then knowing exactly what that drag is going to do when you do your proper jig hook set, that's very important. You can pop off a connection knot or the loop knot very easily, especially if you get bit very close in. If you only have, say, 12, 13 feet of line out and you get bit at your feet and you give it, that 100% rear bag full swing hook set, you better hope your drag is performing, especially if it's a larger fish. So that's something that I always pay a lot of attention to. And the new Complex XR is an interesting model. I don't know if I will buy one, but I feel if you do some crossover fishing, like very light line, finessey stuff in freshwater, and then you want to put PE1 12-pound leader for fluke, this could be a reel that you could look at. Again, it seems pretty much the same as the Vanford with that one exception, that rigid drag support. And yeah, but once again, the downside to this is a JDM only model. So, getting this model, you either service it yourself. I don't think Shimano USA is going to touch it. But anyway, very interesting, and it's an interesting looking reel, right? I mean, these cutouts, I don't know how I feel about that. It almost looks like something Luz or Abu would do, some OEM spinning reel. But it probably looks better in person. I think most Shimano reels look better in person. So, in any case, that's the Complex XR. Here's the Vanford. Once again, Vanford is my recommendation to 99% of people just looking to get the appropriate size reel for quarter ounce single jigging in the surf. Okay, very quickly, let's just go over the bait casting models unveiled at the 2025 fishing show. So first up, Antares. Now, this is a reel I've never even thought about owning, and this probably wouldn't change my opinion on that, but it is the coolest looking bait casting reel ever made by any company, in my opinion. I mean, this looks like a futuristic piece of engineering from the 1980s, right? And I think Shimano mostly kept to that form, that mirror finish. I'm sure it's extremely nice, but you know, it's pretty interesting. Kind of like how Daiwa uses mag seal in all their spinning reels, at least their higher end ones. Shimano goes to that micro module gearing, and that's one of the reasons I haven't used a Shimano baitcaster for many years. The last one I had was a Corrado 70 that turned buzzy on me. And if you go on the forums, a lot of people have a lot of problems with that tiny micro module gear teeth. And it just seems that Shimano is kind of sticking with it, right? So therefore, thank God there's Daiwa. All my bait casting reels are Daiwa reels. I also prefer Daiwa's various magnetic brake settings, right? Especially their SV reels. To me, are just the most beginner friendly and also no brain input when you're casting into the wind. And Daiwa figured out how to cut gears even in aluminum that stays smooth. And Daiwa reels, before they went to that hyperdrive gearing, probably 3 or 4 years ago, they always felt kind of airy to me, like something hollow about that retrieve. But now Daiwa reels feel fantastic. So Daiwa baitcasters for me, Shimano spinning, that's sort of my lineup at home. Anyway, that's the Antares. This is their flagship baitcasting reel. It's heavy. It's not perhaps the most functional. Yeah, I mean, these are Stratic weights, right? But there it is. I don't think anyone would be unhappy getting one of these. MGL4 spool. But once again, probably just incremental improvements. On that one, there's the surprise to me, which is the Aldebaran DC. So they put a DC in their 30 size reel. And I know people like Jimmy at Raw Fishing is pretty excited about this model. I don't do much BFS fishing. To me, power BFS is really where it's at for bass fishing. I don't need a DC reel for that. Although, actually, PE1 185, that's actually a lot of line. So, if you're casting small baits around, 8 pound, 100 meters, that's probably plenty. It certainly looks better than the Aldebaran BFS. So there you go. Probably not a reel I would get, although it's possible. Okay. Next up, Scorpion MD. This came out a few months ago, but it has now the Tranx counterpart in the US. I'm pretty sure these are pretty much the same exact reel. Yep. Right? Let's see. Let's just compare these side by side. Different handles, different knobs, but the screws, the body shape, yep, same exact reel. Um, Again, Tranx, I believe now that, yep, they went to micro module gearing. I don't think the previous version had it. So in my opinion, this is a step down. It might feel smoother in the beginning, but I have no confidence that that will last, especially in a 300 size reel, right? Now, what's interesting about the Tranx that I don't think Daiwa has an equivalent answer to is the X-Protect version in their baitcaster. And as far as I know, there's no labyrinth system here. There's sort of a seal that kind of protects water from splashing directly into the drivetrain. But whether or not it works, I've heard reports that Tranxes will rust out even quicker because once water does go past that sort of half seal, it becomes very difficult to flow out or evaporate out, and it basically traps water. I don't know, this is not a reel that I've had much experience with, but there you go. That's the new Tranx, the new Scorpion MD, which comes in that black color and different knobs. Let's see. What is next? SLX BFS. Again, this is a true BFS reel. I think the SLX has been a pretty big hit for Shimano. I don't know anything about these braking system. FTB, I believe, is a combination of centrifugal and magnetic braking. In my opinion, if you're looking for a BFS reel, I think Daiwa has a larger selection of user-friendly mag brake reels than Shimano does. But that's just my very uninformed opinion. I did recently pick up an SLX baitcaster just to see what it's like, and it just confirmed that I prefer SV and mag braking just a little bit better. Okay, so finally, this is the last thing that is relevant in my opinion. Poison Adrena. This came out earlier last year, the new Poison Adrena, and they finally added this model, which is a two-piece 7'6" medium. I've had good reports from some people who got this rod in the previous generation. So this model is the most relevant in terms of fluking, at least as far as I'm concerned. And anyone who wants to check it out, it is now available. Let's see, all the way down here, 276 medium 2. 2 stands for two piece. Weight 102 grams. 3.6 ounces. Pretty good. Pretty good. And lure weight 5 to 15. Let's see. Okay, so a little over half ounce. I mean, your quarter ounce jig head plus a 6-inch gulp jerk shad is almost 5/8 of an ounce. So you're kind of pushing the rod limit there, but I have a feeling this rod will handle it just fine. Yeah, so those of you who want the Poison Adrena and you don't mind the lack of a foregrip, which I kind of gave Shimano some flack on in a previous Poison Adrena review video, you see right there, no foregrip. That hard, convoluted design aluminum nut is what your middle finger is going to be resting on during the retrieve, and more importantly when you're fighting a fish. So in my opinion, not the most comfortable setup, although I am toying around with possibly getting one of the new Poison Adrenas, but in a very light, even ultralight spinning model. Okay, that is going to wrap up my very brief overview on new Shimano products, mainly focused on the spinning reels, which I think is probably the most fitting for this channel anyway. Nothing that exciting in the rod department. Baitcasters, I don't think most of you care, although you might if you start using one, especially for jerk baits. But that is Shimano's new product line. Let's see, did I miss anything in the USA series? No, Ultegra. Okay, so here is something that I'm personally interested in is a USDM Shimano swim bait rod series. And these are not launching until March or April, but I might be checking one of these out. Again, for freshwater, but who knows? Could cross over into the salt as well. I personally think for really hardcore tog fishermen, if you're fishing from a jetty, you need the length. A lot of the swim bait rods have specs that just line right up to that kind of fishing, right? You need to throw a 1, 2, 3 ounce sinker out from the jetty, and you need that long rod for leverage and the proper line angle to get those fish out of the rocks. Look into some of the swim bait rods, but my advice is you don't want a fast action swim bait rod. You want a swim bait rod designed for glide baits. So medium fast, regular fast, that kind of action. I think, if you're tog fishing, most likely you're going braid to leader, and you don't want a fast action for that. Okay. All right. So that's what Shimano has to offer in 2025. I hope you enjoyed this sort of brief rundown. Well, not so brief, but anyway, hope you found that helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.